Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle Dracula Horror Movie Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, we kick off our Musical Horror Retrospective with the 1986 classic adaptation of the off-Broadway hit Little Shop of Horrors, directed by none other than Yoda himself, Frank Oz. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the Alex Van Helsing adventure Triumph of Death in hardback and ebook from HarperCollins. With me are Drew Edwards, creator of the long-running horror webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at HalloweenMan.com. Say hello, Monsieur Drew.
Hello, baby.
Nice. Our dentist, Tony Salvaggio, co-creator of the Victorian Met comic Clockworks, coming this spring from Humanoids, and lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars, and bassist for the Japanese rock band Pocari Shred. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. And as always, color commentary from dangerous attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Hello, Ma.
I have elevated you to dangerousness. Okay. Gentlemen and lady, Little Shop of Horrors is a 1986 musical comedy film directed by Frank Oz, so saith Wikipedia. It is a film adaptation of the off-Broadway musical comedy of the same name by composer Alan Menken of Little Mermaid and writer Howard Ashman, about a nerdy florist shop worker who raises a vicious, raunchy plant that feeds on human blood. Menken and Ashman's off-Broadway musical is based on the low-budget 1960 film The Little Shop of Horrors, directed by Roger Corman. The film stars Rick Moranis, Ellen Greene, Vincent Gardenia, Steve Martin, and Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops, so say the credits, as the voice of Audrey II, the plant. So, this is the first of our musical horror retrospective. I am so psyched to be doing this. I'm going to go first impressions, Drew, Tony, Julia, and then me, and let us kick it off. And we're going to try and be efficient. We're going to be trying for once stick within our allotted hour instead of our hour, which always seems to be an hour and 40 minutes or so, sometimes closer to an hour becoming 2 hours. So, Drew, first impressions, Little Shop of Horrors.
I really, really like this movie. Musically, I think out of all the movies we are planning on doing, the style of music here, which is just based off of like doo-wop and early rock and roll and R&B and gospel, which is all, I really love the music of the 50s and 60s, so it's close to my heart as far as the way it sounds. I love the really killer practical effects that are in this movie. I everything with the plant I'm in love with. It's hysterical. It looks great. I really love the hyper stylized late 50s, early 60s world that this takes place in. And man, just conceptually, I like Little Shop of Horrors. I like the old Roger Corman movie. I like the stage play. And I really, really like this movie. It's just plain fun. Like, if you watch this movie, it's going to leave you with a big, goofy grin on your face.
Outstanding. All right. Tony, your first impressions? Anything more that you would say? That was a lot of positive stuff.
I think I like it for exactly all of that. I think Drew pretty much took anything I could say, and I'm not going to be able to say it as well. So, yes, I totally agree with Drew. How about that?
All right. And we'll get into differentiations. And Julia, what are your first impressions?
I too agree with Drew because Drew is so wise and all powerful. And I would also add that I love all the special guests or whatever, all the special stars or whatever you want to call them. They're just such great performances all throughout with some of these wonderful comedians of the 80s, and it's just so much fun. And the songs are so memorable. I mean, I realize I don't remember the movie that well. I had seen it many, many years ago, but the songs I remembered every single one, at least the chorus of it anyway. So just some great music.
That's absolutely right. I think that was the thing that you mentioned while we were watching it. Is you were like, I don't remember any of this movie, and yet I can sing along with all of the songs from 20 years ago, and that's a pretty good musical. I mean, it's also So I like this movie because it's of musicals that I enjoy, this one is extremely singable. Now, part of that is Alan Menken, who's the guy behind pretty much every one of the late 80s and beyond Disney musical extravaganzas was written by this, well, not most of the princess ones. So Little Mermaid, all those big musical numbers were written by by Alan Menken. I can't remember what else, but Pocahontas was done by him. So what I really enjoyed here was this thing has a sensibility that parodies Broadway shows, but is built by a guy who is like the best of the best as far as creating, giant show-stopping numbers, and he has all of these skills for creating memorable music. I was amazed. And like Joya says, it's nice to see this sort of hit parade of mid-1980s comedy stars just sort of walking on and doing these funny bit parts and walking off. So, okay. And Levi Stubbs is fantastic. So we're going to get into it. Because I could just sort of list them off and go, and that guy's fantastic, and that guy's fantastic. All right, to start off, let's talk, Drew, you began talking a little bit about the world of the show. So before we get into the individual performances, which I really want to, let's talk about the tone that's set by the movie. And I guess that would be the tone and the sets and the world, and the style of it. And what can you give us about that?
Well, obviously they're slightly lampooning B-movies of the 50s and 60s with the way this movie looks, but it's done on. I mean, the original Little Shop of Horrors was a movie that was shot in like 2 days and 1 night, and it was practically a no-budget movie. This has a lot. This is pumped to the gills with money. I mean, this is at the time, I believe, the most expensive movie Warner Brothers had made, and was until they made the first Batman movie. And
you're kidding? Was it really?
Yeah. Yes.
That's amazing. Clearly there's a lot going on here. This movie, they filmed. Now I know this because I read it in advance. They built this giant Skid Row, New York set, which has a corner and it has alleys and it has actual sets that they can carry the camera into, and it has an elevated train going through it. So it's a pretty big, impressive set. So I guess you're right. That's a heck of a lot of money to be spending.
A lot of movie magic and movie moolah right there.
Yes.
But it's I would describe the look of the movies as almost gleefully synthetic, though. Like it doesn't look like. It's funny. Like, I'm heavily involved with the rockabilly scene, which apes the time period that this is taking place in. But it's honestly, I would actually feel like most of the clothes that you see if you were to go to a show looks more like the stuff here, which is a recreation of a recreation. It's over the top. Right. If you look at an actual 50s movie, it doesn't look quite as animated as this, as cartoonish as this. Like, I mean, I think if there is one character that actually beams this through more than anyone, is actually the character of Audrey, who is this, talks in this exaggerated Jane Mansfield by way of Betty Boop voice, and just wears these ludicrous, yet wonderfully designed outfits.
Yes.
So,
no, her outfits are great, and I love, and there's, I love when she says, she makes some comment where, I worked at that other place where I wore something like low, trashy outfits, not nice, like tawdry outfits.
And I was,
I do want to
not anything classy like this or something.
Yeah, I do want to see those because that would be awesome.
Yeah, no, it would. We do want to see the Kit Kat Club or whatever it is where she works. But,
I just want to say that what Drew was saying about the synthetic. I love the image that they have of their ideal place that they're going to live. Somewhere that's green. Where they're going to live after they get married, and then they go.
And
at the end. So
and
cute.
the yard.
So perfect.
the yard looks so deliberately fake. Like they weren't trying to make it look real.
What's funny is
it's not even a yard. It's not even grass. It's just green like felt or something.
Yes.
Well, it's exactly what was the opposite of anything that Tim Burton would want, and exactly what they're lampooning in Edward Scissorhands. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like her dream becomes the nightmare for Tim Burton eventually.
And we've seen that before. I mean, think about I'm thinking of some music videos, like Soundgarden, Black Hole Sun did that, where there was like this bizarre sort of hyper colorful image of the suburbs, but this sort of what Drew is referring to also, where the whole period looks exaggeratedly fake, and at the same time, but that's the world that they're living in.
Well, the pompadours that the guys have, they're not just like, an Elvis Presley, pompadour. They're huge. Like, they're the 80s equivalent, where they're just like, I think of like John Candy's hair. It's just gigantic.
Now, tonally though, that could get old really quick. I mean, if you think about there was a TV version of the Spirit about 20 years ago, long before the movie version that nobody liked either. There was a TV version of the Spirit that did this, where the colors were super bright, and so the Spirit's blue suit was like this crazy sort of neon blue, and the reds were giant red, and that's camp. And camp can be really annoying, and yet somehow, I think because Frank Oz is both doing that and also has all the grime and all the dirt and all the muck, and he's got these really neat Broadway performances, I guess what it winds up being is sort of the suggestion of you're looking at a stage play, a weird stage play that has kind of spilled out into several directions.
It's really crazy too, because it was a story, a WPA story, that then got adapted to a play, that then got adapted to a movie, that then got turned into a musical, that then got turned into a movie musical. So we're like 5 or 6 generations down the tree already when we get to this movie.
Yeah, and it's the movie. I haven't actually watched it. I see now it's free on YouTube, so I obviously I have to see it. But by the time it got adapted for the play was clearly a parody, and it was off-Broadway. And I was listening, especially when Christopher Guest walks in, and I didn't recognize it was Christopher Guest until just today. But when he walks in and says, "Pardon me, I couldn't help but notice that amazing plant," and they're all talking like this, you recognize that it's genuinely parody. It's genuinely supposed to make you think of how other plays go and how other movies go.
But the emotions of the characters are done in such a way that it doesn't quite veer totally into camp, and I feel like that's really important. Like, you do feel something for Audrey and Seymour.
Well, you do, but so is this a flaw? Have we uncovered something here? Because I have to say,
I don't think it's a flaw. I don't think it's a flaw. I don't think it's a flaw at all. I think it's elevated. With a lesser cast, and this has an amazing cast. With a lesser cast, could have been kind of the equivalent of, like, say, the Joel Schumacher Batman movies. I think it's okay to have this kind of stylization with some solid emotional grounding. I mean, it's funny, like last week you were talking about how you'd like to walk around in the House of the Devil world. I would love to take a visit the little universe that this takes place in.
Oh, for sure. Wouldn't you love to go like just rent a 2-bit apartment over Mr. Mushnick's store and just go get some,
Well, apparently all you have to do is go to Pinewood Studios in England, and you'll see you can be there.
It was the 007 set at Pinewood. Amazingly, this is the same set that we've seen flooded in other movies, and it's just amazing what they can do. Okay, so that's a little bit about the tone. Let's get into the performances, and if we want to kick back on any more of the sets and tone, we can get back to it. But all right, this is the first movie I ever saw that has Rick Moranis as the star. I mean, I suppose maybe Bob and Doug.
Ghostbusters, he's a pretty major part, though. He might not be the star, but he was a pretty big deal in Ghostbusters.
All right, in Ghost. So this movie is 1986. What year is Ghostbusters?
84 or 85, I want to say.
And I mean, okay, so that's clearly it's before. It had to be before. I can't believe that I've forgotten this.
It's not before.
It's 1984. Ghostbusters in 1984.
Yes, and this is and this is 86. So, and forgive me for not remembering that, but anyway, so Rick Moranis played the Keymaster. And by the way, let's see. His name was featured pretty big. So when did he do Bob and Doug McKenzie? That's something I should know. But anyway, Rick Moranis is a guy who was well known from SCTV, which was a Canadian comedy sketch show by a lot of the same brains behind Saturday Night Live, and it was populated by people from the Second City TV program, and it featured a bunch of people like Rick Moranis and Eugene Levy and John Candy and a bunch of these guys actually show up in this movie. But Rick Moranis was a guy who was well known for playing parts a lot like Seymour that he plays here, and also he did a great Woody Allen impression and stuff like that. But this is a part that requires him to really sing the whole movie. And I don't know the first thing about singing, so I don't know if a person is a bad singer, pretending to be a bad singer, a good singer. I don't know from any of those things.
Well, no, it's comic singing. I mean, it's not supposed to be good singing. It's supposed
so tell me about the singing, in fact. So go ahead, continue.
Yeah, it's not intended to be quality. It's not like Russell Crowe trying to sing a song that's supposed to be sung well and not singing it well. It's comedic singing, So it's not.
I don't know what you're suggesting about Inspector Javert right there. Go ahead.
It's not intended to be like a tenor or a baritone, like belting it out at the opera. It's just he doesn't hit notes flatly, but it's certainly not like But he does what he's supposed to do. It's perfect. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. It's funny.
He can carry a tune. I mean, it's not like painful to listen to him, But at the same time, she's right. He doesn't have like what you would say, like you wouldn't go, oh my goodness, Rick Moranis has this amazing singing voice.
Right.
But it would sound wrong if Seymour had an amazing singing voice.
Yeah, I think.
Well, and it's probably. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
I think he did a really good job at playing the role, and he's a good singer. I mean, he's kind of. I mean, anytime you put him against, he's opposite the actual voice of the off-Broadway performer.
Yes.
And and then the chorus is awesome. So I mean, given that, he's maybe not as great, but I think he does a really great job. By the way, his character Krellborn, they actually use that term because he's so geeky. They use that term in Malcolm in the Middle.
Really?
To define all of the nerds that Malcolm is saddled with when he's his classroom. Like the whole school calls them Krellborns.
That is hilarious.
Out of place geniuses. And I never really. I was like, wait, and then I was like, oh yeah, that is from Little Shop of Horrors.
What a strangely geeky universe Malcolm in the Middle must live in, though, where even the people who hate nerds can name the nerd after a hit off
Yeah,
Broadway
who knows
musical.
where it actually who started that first? But for whatever reason, they're all called Krellborns.
but truly the way that Rick Moranis, I actually didn't think that he was bad. The reason I ask is it seems to me that this is the kind of singing that can really fool you into thinking, oh, if I went and auditioned for Little Shop of Horrors, I could do that. And I'll bet that you couldn't, that actually it's not easy to sing an entire movie in character, and hit your notes and still maintain your accent and still maintain all that stuff. And and in a minute we're going to talk about Ellen Greene because he has to do that as well. But I loved him in this character. It's funny. This is before like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid. It's kind of neat that they've built an entire movie around Seymour. So Seymour is. Tell me about Seymour morally, because what happens is to set it up. Seymour is the boy who works for, he's not that young, but he works for Mr. Mushnick, who runs a florist that is going broke, and he's in love with the hot but abused Audrey, who is this beautiful blonde that also works in the flower shop, and Mr. Mushnick employs them both, and there are no customers. And Seymour has an idea, because he has found an exotic plant, that if he puts the plant in the window, it will be good advertising and he'll bring attention.
And the exotic plant came about because he was wandering around during a total solar eclipse total eclipse of the sun, and he wandered past this Chinese flower shop, and right as he looked at the total eclipse, suddenly this plant appears, like as if zapped from outside of the world. And then he sees it and is like, oh, this is interesting, and the Chinese person sells it to him. And much like it said, without any warnings about don't feed the plant after midnight and don't get it wet, et cetera, which should have been. So what
are these random Asian stereotypes good for, if not to give us the instruction booklet that goes with the exotic plant?
Right.
But go ahead.
Or the exotic animal. Anyway, so that's where he got it, where it came from, and so then he just brought it to home, and upon finding out that they're about to be fired, he says, well, maybe we could put this in the window and people will be interested, and sure enough, magically, it works.
Yes. So tell us about the morality of Rick Moranis' character, Seymour, because an awful lot of people wind up getting killed because of him, or not. I mean, in other words, what I'm trying to get at is, yeah, please.
This one's I'm a little on the fence about, because especially when we get into talking about the ending, I feel like I don't weep too much for Steve Martin's character, because he was abusive and he's a sadist. And he's a dentist, but
Steve Martin, the abusive boyfriend of Audrey.
I do kind of feel bad for Mr. Mushnick, even though Mr. Mushnick is kind of slimy.
Mr. Mushnick starts out.
He definitely didn't deserve to die.
Yeah,
he doesn't deserve to die, but he's definitely going to do something to take over. Because I mean, at this point in time, also because of how Audrey 2 works, you've got, they're going to sign these TV, like the whole, it also becomes like a play on, pop culture and consumerism as well.
Yeah.
And so at this point,
he's also kind of Dracula, and Seymour is Renfield.
Right.
Well, Mr. Mushnick starts out as being a character like Rod, I guess it was Rod Taylor, I can't remember, in The Pawnbroker, the guy who's, struggling, he's running he's kind of a bitter and funny old guy who's running the store, and he has these suffering employees, and he's mean, but he has a heart of gold. And that's true, and he seems really good. So when he takes a turn for the evil, I don't know, I actually felt as though I was being manipulated towards the end. When all of a sudden Mushnick pulls a gun on Rick Moranis and says, well, maybe I'm going to start controlling the plant, and you just get out of town because I know that you chopped up the boyfriend. I thought that was really something that the script was doing just to make us find it acceptable for Seymour to feed Mushnick to the plant.
Well, Seymour in the movie is also a lot less responsible for people's deaths than Seymour in the play or Seymour in the Roger Corman film.
And tell me more about that, and I'll be right back.
Well, Seymour in the play, and admittedly it's been years, is more actively manipulating Mushnick to get eaten by the plant. And
right.
If I remember correctly, also Seymour in the Roger Corman version actually gets in a knife fight with the dentist. This sort of like badly choreographed B-movie one, but a knife fight nonetheless.
He gets in a knife fight? Oh, you mean so he takes a more active... I had heard about this, that he takes a more active role.
He is more... And also, I mean, the plant in the original film version also has hypnotic powers. He is more overtly Draculian than Audrey 2 here. But
the plant is Dracula. Okay, very good.
Yes, the plant is definitely Dracula.
I actually, honestly, when you said that, I thought you were saying that you felt like Mushnick had some...
Yeah, I thought that too. Yeah.
No.
But I totally agree with you that, the plant is being manipulative.
Yes. I feel like Seymour, the way they do it in the movie, he never actively murders anybody, but he certainly does some like pretty twisted things. I mean, he hacks somebody up with an axe, which no matter how they... So I do, in the end, kind of wish he got a little bit more comeuppance. At the same time, I do have a lot of empathy, and I like Seymour. So, and he is being played as a dupe by Audrey 2, who is certainly slick as all get out.
I love that Audrey 2 just slowly works in there, because the first killing isn't even really a killing, and he just, first of all, he decides that Steve Martin deserves to die, and he goes fully preparing to kill him.
He wants to kill him.
Yes, but I mean, we want to kill him too, because Steve Martin, we've seen him beat, Audrey, and we've seen that he's a terrible person in the movies. That justifies murder. So, the guy sure looks like plant food to me. We totally agree with that line. And so, but he gets lucky because he goes to visit the sadistic doctor, and that is Steve Martin, and Steve Martin manages to accidentally overdose himself on nitrous oxide. So,
and let's I know this is skipping around because I know you're trying to talk about the morality of Rick Moranis, but we have got to talk about Steve Martin right here because, I mean, oh my God, what a brilliant performance!
All right, so let's move on to Steve Martin.
Oh, by the way, I like to, after seeing so many Rick Moranis performances, and watching this again, if you want to see comeuppance, Drew, you can always do what I think, which is he eventually goes to the future past and becomes, since he's so jaded with how his fame turned out in this movie, he becomes Billy Fish and starts managing Ellen Aim in Street to Fire, because they're pretty much the same character. Only I can now see that Rick Moranis, jaded from his time with studio people in Little Shop of Horrors, eventually becomes the not so
Streets of Fire?
Yeah,
are you talking about the Michael Pare movie?
He plays pretty much this guy who's like he's just Rick Moranis.
I don't think I've seen that movie since it came out, and that's, now I'm just looking it up now. That's the same year basically. That's 1984. It's like 2 years before this.
Yeah.
So it's funny. Before everybody gets typecast, they a lot of times get to show us some breadth. It's like actors have this. Have you ever noticed this? How actors will have a period early where they're playing all kinds of things because nobody knows who they are. And then they become something and they play the same thing over and over.
What's the movie that has Jack Nicholson playing like a regular person? I was like, what?
Well, The Terror. Jack Nicholson plays a normal person in The Terror, but
how are you not going to seem, you're going to, no matter who you are, you're going to seem normal compared to Boris Karloff.
Yes.
That's true.
Oh, someday we've got to do The Terror. Please, guys, let us do The Terror.
Roger Corman retrospective. We will pencil that in.
Sounds good. Anyway,
The Terror is a movie that I've watched 1 million times, and I still couldn't tell you what the hell happens in it.
This was it. What were we telling me that was Roger Corman? Was it the original?
Oh yeah,
the original
Little Shop of
Horrors is a Roger Corman.
Yeah.
Yes.
This in a weird roundabout way is a remake.
Yes.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Although,
so did Corman get any money off of this? Does that mean that Corman gets a paycheck?
It's in the public domain. I wonder about that.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we were going to talk next about Steve Martin. So Steve Martin plays how best to put this, a complete psychopath who is a dentist and sings.
A sadist. He's a sadist.
He's a sadist. Yes.
And he is an awful lot like how you would imagine Elvis if he was evil.
Yes, an evil sadistic Elvis.
Yeah, and he has a magical motorcycle, which I just love, that he can fly through the air with his motorcycle, and then he can jump off the motorcycle, and the motorcycle will continue to roll and then stop a couple of feet ahead.
Yes.
I just love that.
Yes,
but,
almost as though the motorcycle were on rails. It's a one. Yes, it's and I love his jacket, his sort of old school. That there in old movies, surgeons, doctors, dentists, everybody wears these sort of double-breasted white suits, these white coats that no doctors wear anymore, and I love these things. And his is black, and he has a black. Well, no, he has a white one, he has a black one, he has a black jacket. He looks fantastic, and he talks like Elvis all the time, and he sings that song "You'll Be a Dentist," which is his own song. You know, he gets introduced, you know, just in passing that he's not a good boy, so says Mr. Mushnick, and then we cut to Steve Martin's Crazy Song, and then we see his practice where he tortures his customers regularly.
Well, the crazy song is that because he liked to hurt animals and was sadistic and horrible, his mother said, "Son, you'll be a dentist."
Right.
It's a wonderful story of his. You know, it's kind of like a Dexter. You know, where the dad's like, "Okay, well, you're going to be evil, so at least kill serial killers."
And the funny thing is, that level of snarkiness has to be an off-Broadway show, because when you think about, like, you know, straight up Broadway, you've got a lot more. You might have humor. You know, The Music Man is full of sort of winking humor, but you go to off Broadway for that kind of awareness and parody and you know, nonsense like that. So that's where you get sort of this indie feel, that this notion that he's a psychopath, therefore he is a dentist. I love it.
So he gets, he gasses himself to death, and so then Rick Moranis, you know, has. But before that happens, probably one of my favorite moments of the entire film is Bill Murray showing up as a patient, and Bill Murray has heard about Steve Martin and how he's this crazy sadistic dentist, and he's a masochist, so he wants desperately to be hurt by Steve Martin, and so he comes in and he's just got like the most delirious, like just like ecstasy face of like, oh my God, I can't wait, this is so awesome. You know, he's listening to somebody else screaming, and then they come out and he's like, what did they do? What did he do? Oh, this is great. So then he goes in. He's
climbing his chair in anticipation.
Yeah. Oh, and his faces that he makes. I really feel after watching this again that Jim Carrey models a lot of his faces on Bill Murray in that part, because there was so much Jim Carrey in that role. But and then he's like, every tool that he brings out, he just gets more excited. And Steve Martin gets really mad because, of course, Steve Martin is all about, you know, people being afraid of him, and not. So he gets really mad that the guy's enjoying it. He kicks him out. It is
a funny bit. And Drew, you've seen the original. Apparently, this part was actually in the original movie.
That was Jack Nicholson. This was Jack Nicholson in the original movie.
This is Jack Nicholson's part.
That's Jack Nicholson, and Jack Nicholson actually has gone down on record that was the very first time he remembered receiving praise for anything, and it was weird because he when he first saw the movie, he didn't quite get it. And
wow,
you know, it's been a while since I've seen the original, because I actually like this version more, strangely enough. But the original's a kick, and if we did do a Roger Corman retrospective, I think it would be a fun one to dive into.
Well, it would be absurd not to. I mean, especially because apparently the original one is filmed on the same sets as Bucket of Blood. So it'd be kind of fun to do Bucket of Blood and Little Shop to see the same sets, and then he does that again with let's see. The Terror was on Pit and the Pendulum, right? Maybe it was Pit and the Pendulum, maybe it was The Raven.
I'm pretty sure it's The Raven.
Yeah, because The Raven had Karloff, and they said, hey, we got Karloff for a couple more days. Let's make another movie. And they actually did that. That's a movie that I've seen more times than I've seen anything actually decent. That's a truly sad statement about.
You know, I think the credit to Bill Murray here is that he Jack Nicholson at this point is a big star in the 80s, and Bill Murray doesn't hate Jack Nicholson at all, and I think he really does.
Oh no,
make it his own.
Bill Murray is actually making up his lines as he goes along. This is a completely improvised scene, which I think is fantastic because he's just rambling like crazy. We watched Scrooged just about 2 shows ago, and remember he also improvised his confession scene at the end, the big conversion scene. So Bill Murray is good at these sort of stream of consciousness speeches. I've gotten more and more impressed with Bill Murray as time has gone on. I can't wait to see him as FDR.
I loved him since I first saw him in Caddyshack. I was just like, this guy is brilliant.
I can honestly say I would not be the man I am today if it was not for Bill Murray. As strangely as strange as that sounds.
If we can figure out a way to stretch the requirements of this show to somehow allow us to watch Caddyshack, that'll be fine. Perhaps
we could at the very least do Ghostbusters.
Yeah, no, for sure.
We could do Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm.
We could define that little gopher as a monster, and therefore. So, all right, Ellen Greene. Ellen Greene, you said she's doing Jane Mansfield by way of Betty Boop, which I think is a wonderful line, and she is this skinny gal with yellow blonde hair, a wig that she's wearing, a breathy voice, an accent that I don't even know, what you would call this accent, and she wears these sort of low-cut blouses all the time, and she's basically playing a sweet manipulated dancer and bimbo, but a sweet bimbo. I guess, in fact, the nature of bimbos in the movies is usually they are just sort of sweet, sort of wayward gals. And, she's the poor thing. I really felt sorry for the most when, she's on the date with Steve Martin and he's mad at her and he says, he asked her, well, how do you end that sentence? And she goes, doctor. And there's a kind of a need to be approved of and also to not be punished, and it really, really hit really close to my heart. I even though this is an imaginary person, that's a really painful thing to watch. So she's playing this abused girl, and she's got a thing for Rick Moranis, So, and she sings a heck of a lot, and she's probably the best singer of the bunch. What do we think of Ellen Greene singing here?
She's great.
She sings in an accent. I found that strange. Is this hard? And I don't know the first.
No, it's easy to sing in an accent. It's just the same as speaking in an accent. No, she is a very unusual actor and a very unusual singer. I think it's really interesting that as her character changes, so does her style of like how she's going to sing. Even just the same song, the Suddenly Seymour song, she sings it at first kind of timid and shy because she's still under her. Steve Martin's character has just gotten killed, and so she's still kind of like nervous and doesn't really know what's going to happen, and so she's a little bit more timid. And then the second time, the reprise or whatever, it's this real, suddenly Seymour, it's just like this belting. But it's really odd. It's such an odd performance. I've never heard anything quite like it.
And apparently she was actually a holdover from the stage cast, like Tony was saying. I don't know if that's true of Vincent Gardenia, who plays Mr. Mushnick, although it may well have been. So, but she's a holdover, and Frank Oz, the director, I read this. He said that he just couldn't imagine casting somebody else in the part. And the only time,
They wanted Barbara Streisand, who I think at this point would have just looked so old compared to Rick Moranis.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't see that one. I saw in the IMDb it says that that they looked at Madonna and Cyndi Lauper.
Well, Cyndi Lauper would be interesting. I would actually love to see Cyndi Lauper in this role. I think that would be neat. Generally, when you recast one of these things, you do it because you've got a super big star, or because between the time when it was a big hit on Broadway and the movie getting made, everybody's 15 years older, and it just doesn't make any sense anymore. I don't know if Ellen Greene is the same age, older, younger, but she looks okay with Rick Moranis. It's fine. So Oz is right. He's like, there's no sense in recasting this person. She's great. It doesn't matter if people don't know her because they know who Rick Moranis is from SCTV. So that's cool. I loved her. I thought she was fantastic. I wish that there had been more that we've seen her in, and the only thing I remember seeing her in is occasionally showing up on Law and Order. But if I look at her online, apparently she's stayed busy. So I guess that's great. But she's really wonderful. Go ahead.
I feel like Audrey's kind of the backbone, at least the emotional backbone of this movie, because and again, we'll get into this when we talk about change in the ending. Like, the ending of the play, Audrey dies, and if Audrey were to die in the film, I think I would be walking around for the rest of my day crushed, because Audrey's just so cute and so vulnerable, and it's really easy to see why Seymour is sweet on her to the point that he is.
Yeah, I mean, it would be almost like watching a Holocaust movie if that would happen, where you got all these characters that are all good people and they all get killed, and I can totally get why they didn't do that. And Oz says as much. He says, in the movies you can't get away with stuff that you can get away with in a play. So I agree. It would have been crushing to see her get killed. So let's move on to Levi Stubbs. The plant, which Julia insists is a female plant.
It is a transgendered plant because it's got a male voice, but it's a mother plant, and it's called Audrey 2.
Audrey 2.
It's a plant. It's a plant. It does not have gender in the way we think of it. That's gender. That's the way I always looked at it.
I'm fine with that, as long as the plant is not female, because Levi Stubbs.
That's why it's transgendered.
Yes, I know. It is a plant. It's a plant. But Levi Stubbs, who is the voice, this guy from the Four Tops, he is. He comes on in the middle, about the time that the plant develops sentience, and he establishes that, in fact, he is the one in charge, and he's been controlling things from the background, and he's going to start making the decisions around here, and he's really amazing. I mean, I was never a huge Four Tops fan, but I think that this, when you think about it, if you look back on Little Shop of Horrors, I think everybody remembers Audrey too. If I can call her, everybody remembers her more than they remember anything else. You could not have this movie and get rid of that character. And I wonder what it's played like on stage. I mean, whether it's played like this, or whether it's sung differently, or what have you.
It's so. I mean, admittedly, I saw the play after the movie came out, so I kind of wonder if it was influenced by this. But it kind of had that same sort of little Richard-esque quality to it, which is what I always think this, like, above anything. Like, I think that it's funny that somebody from the Four Tops, because the character, the vocalization reminds me so much of Little Richard.
Well, and the Four Tops, if you think about like what they did, that's basically real Motown. So it's like Sugar Pie Honey Bunch and Reach Out and all that stuff. So it's really neat to hear him showing up. And also, I got to say, hearing this voice that's kind of familiar suddenly makes you feel, even though he's the villain, I feel safer than before, because then now you realize that we're essentially in a giant skit. We're in a giant Carol Burnett skit. Here are guest stars coming on and is playing the evil plant. There's a certain safety in having a familiar voice coming on, even though he's he's dangerous and he's growing.
Well, Audrey 2 is a charismatic villain and is a lot of fun. It's not meant to be. This isn't Freddy Krueger. This isn't Hannibal Lecter. This character is fun.
It also is the one thing that sort of brings up the ratings of this movie. Because all the foul language, everything raunchy happens out of the mouth of this plant, basically. Julia, how did you feel watching Little Shop with a 7 and 11-year-old?
Well, I only watched the last few minutes, which of course is probably the worst part to watch because it's just so scary to me. But because it's when he's trying to kill Rick Moranis, he's trying to eat him, and Rick Moranis is trying to get the plant. Like he's trying to, he's got the gun and then the plant. So this is of course the part that my kids are watching with me. So. But I mean, they don't really get that scared. They have a dad that writes, horror books and Dracula. It's like we're all about Dracula here, so it's not like they haven't experienced this, kind of thing before. So they seem to handle it just fine. But no, but I was the one who was actually, what though I thought was scarier than anything else was actually the dentist scene.
Really?
He's going after it because he's really torturing people, like you said. So that was actually worse. And then
I guess that's true. No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
When he's trying to take down Rick Moranis, it was pretty intense, and especially because originally the movie ends with the two of them getting eaten, both of them.
Okay, so yes, let's let's get to that. Let's get to the ending so that then we can wrap up. But yeah, so this is a charismatic evil plant. And it's, it soon reveals that it wants to, in fact, take over the world. It's the one that's in charge. It's been manipulating Rick Moranis to feed it people, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And it has a plan to allow itself to get reproduced all across the earth because, as Joy points out, it's a mother, and it's going to take over. And so in the original play, and apparently as actually filmed, genuinely filmed, the movie now veers, it does a complete 90, heads off in another direction, where Audrey eats our two heroes and then fights with the authorities and climbs the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty or something like that, and is going to take over the world. And that ending was shot, okay? They actually literally shot that ending where the plant eats everybody and is going to take over the world. And Frank Oz said that they showed it in test screenings twice, two sides of the country, and the audiences just literally, they were loving it, they were clapping, they were having a good time, and then after the plant eats the main characters and takes over the world, they just hated the whole thing. They were like, it was unforgivable. And Oz put it this way, he said, when you're on a stage, when you're in some cute little off-Broadway theater, a very intimate space, and then the characters die and everything's played for laughs, and then after the show's over, 3 minutes later, everybody comes out for a curtain call. But in the movies, you get close to these people, you get close to Ellen Greene, and so she gets killed, it's like you just can't get past it. There's no curtain call in the movies. So he was like, we can't do this. We can't release this movie this way. So they went back and they filmed a different ending, which is the one we see here, where Rick Moranis gets buried in rubble and then emerges with an electrical cable, which he uses to electrocute the plant. And that's the end. And
well, except that somehow a small baby plant survives and manages to plant itself in the newlyweds' garden, so that you close out with the little plant just kind of grinning mischievously.
Yes. a little piece of Audrey, and that's not surprising because it could have been in his pocket, could have been in his cuff, could have followed him on the bottom of his shoe and got transferred to his yard. It'd be literally transfer, like they say in the Patricia Cornwell novels. It just went from, vegetation goes from one place to another. But did we lose? I think we lost Drew.
Yeah, Drew.
Oh dear, that explains the sudden silence of Drew. I feel terrible about that. Well, I'll look for him anyway. There he is. Hey, Drew, are you back? He'll be back in a sec.
So
anyway,
you guys wanted to know what everybody's favorite song was. I think somebody.
By the way, while we're waiting, I think that I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think the Audrey performance informed the Oogie Boogie performance.
Oh my gosh, that's a really wonderful observation.
So what performance?
Oogie Boogie.
Oogie Boogie.
Before Christmas.
Well, and I was saying that I think that the initial song, the downtown, the Skid Row song, I think that is what they based the SNL sketch about the Christmas for the Jews. Do you remember that?
Christmas Time for the Jews. Yes.
Sure.
Christmas Time for the Jews. I think they totally based it on that scene because it's exactly like with the Broadway, with the Motown girls and then the.
Right.
Kind of the sad people walking through the street.
Yeah.
But the performance that Audrey, the Audrey 2 gives is very much, whether or not they, it was subconscious or whatever, I think it definitely,
I think there's definitely some of that.
Together and which is, to me, really awesome. But
I think there's that Danny Elfman was probably thinking a lot of this. He'd absolutely have to, for the Oogie Boogie. Yeah, that's especially like you're joking. Especially, it sounds so much like Mean Green Mother and a couple other songs here.
And I'm
okay.
mad.
Yeah. What? So, Drew, you go first since you're back. We're gonna pick our favorite song from this show. So, what's your favorite number from Little Shop of Horrors?
It would probably be a toss-up because they're all good. But a toss-up between the actual theme with the doo-wop Motown-esque girl group and the shop. Yeah, that one's it's so catchy. Like I've been singing it for days now. And downtown Skid Row is I think probably my second favorite.
Yeah. Okay, so Julia, what would be your favorite song?
Well, I mean, I think Downtown to Skid Row is so great, but it's not as catchy as some of the other ones. It's just a really good, solid song. I mean, to me, the funniest one is You'll Be a Dentist because I just love Steve Martin. He's so hysterical. But the one I've been stuck on, which is not my favorite, and so it's kind of annoying to me that I'm stuck on it, is Suddenly Seymour. That one's the most catchy to me, but it kind of annoys me.
Yeah, but it's also really sweeping. So that's kind of it's got that in its favor, And they bring it back. When Seymour's a hero and stuff, and so that's actually I thought that was really clever. Actually, was when they bring it back each time, it's pretty cool.
It's a reprise, and it's a nice reprise. Tony, what was yours?
I think mine's a tie between Downtown Skid Row and You'll Be a Dentist. Both of them have awesome, but it's really hard to top the Skid Row song just because it's got all the bits that are awesome about it.
It's got everything that makes a Broadway show.
Chorus, and it's got in fact, when Raina and I were watching it, she kind of brought up a point, and I thought it was kind of interesting. You see less and less of the chorus later in the movie.
Yeah,
and I wish that they could have put more of that back in because they're all really awesome. And I think if you're going to keep that motif, continuing with it, some of it, they do third act stuff, and so maybe there wasn't really room, but it would have been nice to have more of that back in. But yeah, definitely those two songs are kind of in a tie for me.
Wow. First of all, the chorus, whatever they're called, they're useful for doing the narration, like around the middle, all this stuff, like Some Fun Now, when things are going great for Rick Moranis and he's getting famous and stuff. I think my runner-up and the one I'd pick. So the runner-up, definitely Supper Time. I love that one when he's trying to decide whether he's going to kill the old man, and it's going Supper Time, and they're across the street. The chorus sort of comes out of the shadows. That's neat. And but Skid Row. I mean, I love that. I love that piece. It is so like dead solid, perfect Broadway. Considering that this is a parody show, so it's intended to make you think of Broadway shows. That is just perfect, and that just like shows who this guy is. That because it's a moving song, it's a fun song, it's funny, it's dark. I've been singing it all day, so. I think all of us had to at least name check that one. If it wasn't our favorite, it was darn close. So that's a great tune, and it kicks off the movie. So the movie gets kicked off with the song Little Shop of Horrors, but then we open up with this, what Disney always calls the I Want song. That every musical has to start out with the characters all saying I want this or that, and that's what this is. We start out with Seymour going, I want to get out of here. All right. Final thoughts, Little Shop of Horrors. Let's go in the same direction that we did when we began. We went Drew, Tony, Julia, and Jason. So, Drew, real quick, final thoughts on Little Shop, and then we'll come around again and get endorsements. So, give me like 30, 45 seconds on final thoughts.
Yeah, good movie, great songs, very, 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 very cool. If you're a big fan of practical special effects for monsters and the like, there's definitely a lot of eye candy for that, because some of the stuff that they do with the plan is just jaw-droppingly cool. And I definitely a big favorite from my childhood. So thumbs up.
Outstanding. Tony, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's solid musical. I think great performances from everyone. Awesome practical effects. May or may not have fueled many a hentai in the future, for better or worse, I guess, depending on what your views are. I'm not sure. But awesome practical effects and just really solid performances from everybody. It's definitely one I don't watch a lot, but maybe I should watch it more often. I dig it. It's got a lot of, picking a better musical cast, I think, would be really hard. So. Yeah.
It'll be irritating to see this get remade.
They are actually planning on remaking this.
Who are you going to put in this? I guess you could put Neil Patrick Harris.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's going to be as everything with horror remakes, it's going to be darker and grittier.
Of course, because everything needs to be the blacker than black, I suppose.
I don't even know. All right. I don't even know where to go with that.
Why'd you have to do that, Drew?
Sorry, guys.
Don't you, Drew?
This is a remake anyway, so we can't poo-poo a third go around.
It is a remake, but at some point you have remade it in a way that people remembered as being really awesome. Right,
it's a Frank Oz remake of a Roger Corman film. That's a totally...
The funny thing is, to be honest, I sigh because I'm not sure I'm crazy about this idea, but the truth of the matter is I don't mind remakes, because if they're good, they're great, and if they're bad, they literally sink into oblivion.
That's true.
So that you forget.
Gordon-Levitt is pretty awesome, but I just kind of...
The people who do Glee are the ones that are doing it, so we'll see how it turns out.
Oh, good night.
So,
I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to stick around for endorsements, but I want to hang up right now.
I got no complaints. I got no complaints about Glee. I'm not asking for Glee to remake Rocky Horror Picture Show or anything, but I got no complaints really there. All right, Julia, final thoughts on Little Shop of Horrors.
No, I think I said everything that I had to say about it. I just really enjoy it and recommend it highly.
All right, and for me, you got to see it for Audrey and for Audrey 2, both of those. This is really a great way to kick off our musical horror retrospective, and it's made me consider that maybe we also need to work the Buffy musical into this retrospective.
Oh, totally.
I think we should stretch our definition enough to allow a 60 minutes TV special in, especially since it's available on streaming and DVD, because I think the Buffy musical is parodying a lot of things, and I think it's partially parodying this in many ways. So maybe
one of my favorite things of all time.
Yeah. So this was fantastic. Okay, let's do our endorsements. Do you mind if we go in the same direction as before and start with Drew?
Okay.
And if you don't have anything, you can pass along. That's fine.
Oh, I have. Oh, yes. First of all, again, please go to cdbaby.com and buy Danger Cakes Dessert First. If you like the music from this film, no doubt you will find a lot to like about Danger Cakes, because it's all drawn from the same era that inspired the music in this movie. My second endorsement is that I finally got around to seeing Django Unchained, and big thumbs up for Quentin Tarantino's postmodern Western. Even if you don't like cowboy movies normally, I think you would find a lot to like from here. Very, very strong performances from all the cast, but I have to say this is the best thing I've seen from Samuel L. Jackson in years, because he's not just playing his normal Samuel L. Jackson character. He is, practically disappears into this role that he is in this film. So if you have not seen it, go out and see it, or when it inevitably comes out on DVD, check it out.
Very cool. Very cool. Tony, any endorsements this week?
Usually I'll say something about my bands, and I'm just, we're going to be playing out as much as possible. So what I'm probably going to do is say, hey, if you like what I do on here, here's my links. I'll post them on the Castle Dracula Facebook page. And then you can hopefully keep up with both of them, because I think, if you're in Austin, come out to a show. That'd be really cool. As far as endorsements, it's a couple weeks away, but tickets are selling out. Since we're in musical land, my wife, Rain, actually writes musicals, and she has a new one for Frontera Fest Short Fringe that will debut Friday, February 8th.
Yay!
It's called Meet Up the Musical, about a loner who goes to different meetup groups and is trying to find the meetup group that appeals to her, that she feels part of. Shrinky Dinks are involved, and that's been cool, because I've gotten to make Shrinky Dinks as a thing of like, well, looks like we have to do this. So
that is fantastic.
And there's a little bit, I don't want to reveal it, but there's a little bit of kind of would dovetail into our horror podcast. So check out the Frontera Fest, and tickets are a little expensive for like going out, but it's like I think there's 5 performances per night, 4 or 5 performances per night. So you kind of get a full night of theater if you go out, and then hopefully if enough people vote, she gets into Best of Week, and then Best of Fest is always on the table. So since we met as musicians and she's doing this, I have to say, and like I said, it dovetails into our musical time. So Meet Up the
and once again, that was Meet Up the Musical by Rain Knox.
I'll post the thing as well, but that's my endorsement, and I'm looking forward to it, because what I've heard is really good, and she gets really good cast members from various opera performers and actors in Austin who like her enough that they'll do this for not much at all. So that I keep telling her that she must be doing something right.
I mean, good night. I really want to see this. I really, really want to see that. I hope I can figure out a way to get to Austin for that. I didn't even know this was going on.
if not, then I think hopefully we'll tape this one.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll see it, because tickets, like I said, sell out pretty quick because
everybody
wants to go see. It's a small, really, really small, intimate theater, which is pretty cool. So.
Truly delightful. That sounds fantastic. Joya, do you have any endorsements for us?
I am a big fan of Sherlock Holmes and everything that has to do with Sherlock Holmes. I was a huge fan of House, and I'm really sad to see that go. I like the movies. I like the British show Sherlock, and I really like the show Elementary. I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but if I did, then I apologize. But yeah, I recommend watching Elementary and catching up on the back episodes. It's a really fun show with, Johnny Lee Miller, is that his name? And it's just, I don't know, it's really interesting. The only thing I don't like is the silly premise of how Watson is in his life, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But that's Lucy Liu that plays Watson, so it's an interesting twist on that relationship. But yeah, that's my endorsement. Very
cool. Very, very cool. Well, first of all, I would endorse the fact that if you're interested in watching Little Shop of Horrors, the original by Roger Corman, it's in the public domain, and you can find it on YouTube, like a lot of stuff. So that's not bad. In fact, lately, I've been letting a lot of fun stuff stream just in the background. And one thing I've discovered that I do want to endorse, because it would be kind of cool to see people rediscovering this. If you're a fan of Ghost and Mrs. Muir, which is a wonderful black and white film starring Rex Harrison about this widow who moves to a seaside cottage that's haunted by this old sea captain, and they have this sort of ghostly love affair, and it's wonderful. There was a television show that ran for 2 years and was canceled because, as often happens, sometimes shows get canceled even when they're pretty good. In this case, it was canceled because it was running up against Family Affair, which was a big hit. But there was a 2-year television series of the Ghost and Mrs. Muir that actually moved all the action into the contemporary time. Hope Lang of Peyton Place plays Mrs. Muir, and Edward Mulhare played the ghost, and it's a sitcom, but it was a sitcom about a woman having this love affair with a ghost, and so there was plenty of always this heart-tugging stuff like she goes back in time where she's able to actually go to a dance with the ghost, or the ghost tries to get people the information they need to help her through a sickness because he's the only one who can figure out how to heal her, and all this great stuff. So fantastic, completely unknown television series, sort of lost in time, but it turns out there's kind of a community that's a fan of it, and they're on YouTube. Because actually, no matter what something is, and Tony, this is something for us to think about, no matter what something is, there are fans of it somewhere.
even this show.
I used to watch, yeah, exactly. I used to watch that when I would stay with my grandparents in Houston.
Really? Oh, that's fantastic.
It was on, or in the summers I remember watching it. It was on some of the channels.
Yeah.
Go figure.
So they're on YouTube. There's 50 episodes that you can watch. So that's my super obscure endorsement of the week is go check out Ghost and Mrs. Muir, the TV series, and get hooked on it and write fan fiction and send it to me because I need more episodes. Okay. I really appreciate everybody being here. We've been messing around with our webpage recently, and we've set up a new website, and it's got a big link to subscribe at iTunes. So we want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments and recommendations, and let us know what retrospectives you want coming up. And I appreciate everybody being around, and thank you all for being on.
We only went 15 minutes over. Yay.
Yes, we're getting better. We're getting more efficient as we go. All right. Have a fantastic afternoon or evening, as the case may be, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, night.
Night.